panel's here. Good to see you all. I will tell you, Jessica, for the last couple of weeks, the House has been out at home on what they call a district work period. They came back. And I don't know that Mike Johnson was too excited to come back. I feel like he's got this FISA, the Foreign Surveillance Act, that's up for reauthorization. He's got Ukraine funding, and he's got Marjorie Taylor Greene nipping at his heels. I think the question is, just look into your crystal ball for a second. There's a lot of questions. You got this meeting at Mar-a-Lago tomorrow, or this press thing with President Trump. If you sort of looked out 30 days, do you think that the House is on track, that there's more chaos? Like what, like I said, add to that list if you want. Where do you think they are in 30 days from now?
Well, look, Sean, I think that this is not an easy job for Speaker Mike Johnson. And that is like the understatement of the year, right? Because he knew it going in that this was going to be difficult. He was looking at a budget bill, appropriations. He was looking at, we knew FISA was coming, right? They started negotiations for FISA 6 months ago. And the tension between the national security crew, and then this conversation of how do we best protect Americans' safety and security, our own rights. I mean, that is at the heart of so many things. So 30 days from now, honestly, I think we're going to be in the exact same spot. Mike Johnson will be speaker. There will be a threat of vacate still looming over everyone's head. I think the summit at Mar-a-Lago tomorrow helps Mike Johnson. I think it was the right move to talk about the things that we do as Republicans have agreement on, which is election integrity. And there's no better place to have that conversation in the context of the 2024 election than at Mar-a-Lago, then with President Trump talking about the need for election integrity. Easy to vote, hard to cheat. We've got to turn voters out. So I think Speaker Johnson is being smart to shift the conversation, but the policy conversations on the Hill and the anger between so many members of Congress right now, it's personal.
Yes.
There's a lot of personal griping. We know this always with the speaker fight, but the real policy stuff, and on FISA, I think is a good example of this. Like, this is good. Have this in the open. How do we balance national security interests with the rights of protecting Americans? Well, you need a warrant for that. That is the way to connect these two things. So that's a good conversation to have publicly. And I hope 30 days from now that the speaker is still the speaker and we're still dealing with this stuff, but out in the open.
Larry, do you think that in 30 days he is speaker? And if he's not, is that going to be detrimental to the party?
I think in 30 days, he is the speaker. I think that there's a lot of saber rattling right now, and it's understandable. This, by the way, is also very much a Beltway conversation, which is, the power and excitement of your show, Sean, because you are in touch with what's going on in D.C. But I assure you, when we hear from listeners from outside of Washington, they're not angry that Mike Johnson hasn't done more with Congress. That this Republican Congress has one job, and that's to slow down, if not stop, Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden. And they're effectively doing that. All of the complaints about how, they haven't gotten anything done. Yeah, good. Don't do anything. Let's wait until the next election. Just stop the hemorrhaging right now. On the FISA issues, I think that he should be able to find some bipartisan support here. If you go back at the debates of the Patriot Act and some of the issues with the FISA courts, Democrats, Ron Wyden wasn't in favor of this. There were some other Democrats who were very skeptical of this. And the key political phrase here is you can do all this stuff, but as you just said, get a warrant. That's all. That's all we ask. Get a warrant.
But, Will, I mean, if it's that simple, why isn't it solved? If it's just, go get a warrant, why can't they come to a common ground? It seems like you have some real intelligent hawks, if you will, meaning, the Mike Turners of the world who lead the Intelligence Committee saying this needs to stay intact to protect the country. So let me ask you this. Here's what I fear as a conservative is we keep talking about all these people that are coming over the southern border. Okay. We talk about how Biden is letting the gates literally open or leaving the welding of them open and people are coming in. I actually feel like if something were to happen, the Biden administration would say, see, you Republicans didn't reauthorize FISA and now we would have gotten the guy.
I mean, I don't think that's going to work. I think that's a similar gambit to the one they tried to pull 2 months ago where they said, we now support a bipartisan immigration bill, and it's actually Republicans' fault that the border has been insecure for 3 years. That didn't work then. I don't think an attempt to sort of play off border security and say Republicans are at fault for it will work. Whatever Mike Turner thinks may be, true and what the Republicans need to do, I guess I'm just sort of pessimistic about the Republic. I wouldn't want Mike Johnson's job the same way I wouldn't want Kevin McCarthy's job. I'm not envious of either of them. You've got a 1-seat majority and an extraordinarily fractious caucus. I just want to see us get through the next 6 months without a massive implosion. And so, whatever Mike Turner thinks about the need for FISA reauthorization, well, then he needs to go to the Democrats and tell them to secure the border or just throw in something to bring all the Republicans along. It's as simple as that. Like, if you guys think that this is that important, then you need to go to Marjorie Taylor Greene and say, what do you want?
Yeah, unfortunately, though, I think part of the problem is that his threat yesterday to the conference was, guys, the Senate's going to jam us and we're going to have to swallow what they sent us, which I don't necessarily agree. I think the other issue, right, is so let me just ask you this. I want to go around the horn real quick. Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she pulls the trigger, we have to have a vote. So we had her on the show to explain why she did what she did. She filed the privilege resolution, but she hasn't asked for it to be brought up. And she keeps meeting with Johnson, or she met with him yesterday. And I guess my question, Jessica, just go around the horn. Do you think she's going to pull the trigger and seek a vote to vacate the speaker's office?
I think she wants to, and I think she has two reasons that are defensible. Her concerns on Ukraine, which I think is, she outlined in her 5 pages. And then the second being the budget and appropriations process. But I think she likes the threat and the accountability, if you will, that the vacate tool offers Johnson, the conference. And ultimately, I think she walks it back or holds and doesn't actually drop it. And the reason is because I think she cares about winning in November and she cares about President Trump. And President Trump has made clear that Johnson is his guy until November, and we have got to hold on to the House. And that threat overcomes legitimate policy concerns. So I think she holds.
Ding, ding, ding. That's Larry, I think Jessica's absolutely right.
Yep.
That's the answer. That Trump has said, I like Marjorie. I love what she's doing, but please, I don't need more chaos right now. And for Trump to say, I don't need more chaos tells you where the situation is. When Trump walks into a room, he's like, guys, it's just chaotic. Slow it down.
Have a Chick-fil-A milkshake and chill out, everybody.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's the case. I think she's using it's the ultimate leverage, and she's using the leverage. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a very smart politician. We've seen that over the last 12 to 18 months. You use the analogy, will she pull the trigger? She's holding the gun right now. If the trigger gets pulled, it's Donald Trump pulling the trigger. She's not going to do it unless Trump says do this. And I don't think Trump wants this.
No, I agree. And that's what Jessica was saying. Well, I think the thing that to me is fascinating from a political standpoint is the day after Marjorie did this, we had her on the show for the full 40 minutes. And she said, I want this. I need to do. And then I stayed in touch with her. I read the press reports. Johnson texted her at one point and said, hey, I'm really busy. I get you can't cater to everyone all the time. But if you're Mike Johnson, what will you, they met, I guess, yesterday. She sent this letter out. It's at some point, dude, pick up the phone and make that a priority. I mean, I will say Johnson's made a lot of right moves. Politically, him not making it a priority to touch base with her was a huge misstep, and his staff should be blamed for not making that a priority.
Probably. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sympathetic to Mike Johnson. Guy's only been speaker for less than a year, but
wait, hold on. But the thing is, I'm sympathetic too. I agree with a lot of the points that both Jessica and Larry made. I think he's in a horrible position. You said it. It's a tough job. But at some point when someone files a motion to vacate and you're like, hey, I'll get around to calling the person. That to me isn't, I get it. You knew this when you took the job. Marjorie is no wallflower. I'd get on the phone and say, Marjorie, I saw your thing. Can we please meet? I'd like to walk through your concerns. Him leaving her a voicemail and saying, hey, I've been really busy. If I were on the other end of that call, I'd be like, okay, that's where I am on your.
No, you're right, I guess, about that, Sean. I think, clearly Johnson probably did not do a good job of handling Marjorie Taylor Greene in this instance.
Someone should probably inform Speaker Johnson of the events that led to Speaker Johnson becoming Speaker Johnson.
Yeah, that's what my point is. I always joke. It's like, dude, I've seen the movie. I can tell you how it ends. And at some point, this is like one of those, horror movies where it's like, do not open the door by yourself. They're right behind it.
Honestly, this is a situation, I think, where Johnson should take a page out of McCarthy's playbook, and he should put her on a task force, give her a leadership role. Like, the fact that McCarthy and MTG were best buds from a policy standpoint makes no sense. From a political shrewdness, is wicked smart. And that, I think, is where Johnson has a ton of opportunity to grow, right? He got this job because he was a solid consensus conservative that after everyone was done fighting, he was the last man standing saying, guys, I'm your guy. I can pull everybody together. And he didn't have the political, and now he needs it.
See, Jessica, and I say this like respectfully because you do a lot of great work at Sentinel. You look at a lot of polling. You've been involved. But it's like, with respectfully, what you're saying is common sense. It's we all four of us came to the same consensus. Look what happened to Kevin McCarthy. Look how you became speaker. She literally said when she did this, she dangled the carrot out there and said, I'm waiting for him to call me. And he was like, I got a boogie. I got something else to do. It's like she literally gave you the map. You've seen the movie. What else? And at some point, Johnson's staff needs to say, sir, this is a priority because everyone keeps asking. I asked her. I said, what do you want? What'll take it? She said, I just need a phone call. I mean, this was like a cry for help where it was like, just call me, dude. And he, and the best she got was a text. I do want to shift gears. Great information coming out this morning in a brand new poll that Axios had access to. And I want to read you this because I have been saying that the border is the issue that Republicans should be dying on the Hill for. It transcends so many demographics. It is so politically viable for Republicans in every single state. So this poll comes out, and here's the thing that was amazing. The percentage of Latinos who say they support building a border wall and deporting all undocumented immigrants has jumped by 10 points since 2021, according to the latest Axios Ipsos Latino poll. By the numbers, 42% of Latino adults surveyed, they say they support building a wall or a fence across the entire U.S.-Mexico border. That's a 12-point jump from December 2021. 38% support sending all undocumented immigrants back to their country of origin, which is up 10 points from 2021. Will, kind of riffing off what we're just saying, do you really need any more poll? This is it. Guys, you're getting every demographic on board. This is Biden's Achilles heel. Go into fifth gear and drive.
Yeah, no, for a long time, this is obviously the path for Speaker Johnson. And it's one of those things that if Republicans need to pick the one issue to essentially stand firm on and to not do anything that Democrats want unless their demands are met here, it's the border. And I think so far they've done a good job of it. But basically every Republican Congress member who's like, oh no, we need to separate Ukraine and the border and make sure it's like, no. That would be unbelievably demoralizing to Republican voters writ large, that you can get another 60 billion or something for Ukraine, but you can't get 5 billion to build a border wall, that, our borders are going to be a mess. And it's obviously just the obvious political high ground that has massive agreement. We are on the right side of what is effectively a 70-30 or 75-25 issue when it comes to border security. So just stand on it and don't hand out money left and right for Democrat priorities when this is there and they will not. They just refuse to negotiate on it.
So, Larry, regardless of what the Republicans can do with the single, one seat majority they hold in one chamber, the argument that I would make to Speaker Johnson and every member of the Republican conference is don't stop talking about this ever. Yep. Go full throttle and speak of nothing else between now and November. And yet it blows my mind. I will have people on the show. They will nod their head and then they'll be like, so today what we're going to do is X. And it's like, this is the winning issue over and over and over again. And real estate, it's location. This election year, it's border. Yeah.
But I would go even one step further. Not only should they be talking about it every day, but it's how they talk about it. The reason we got that bad Senate bill that died before it even had a chance to breathe was because too many Republicans bought into Democrats' language on this. The most important part of that Axios poll is it's not about immigration. It's not about border security. It's about a wall.
Yes.
It's about a wall. They don't need to talk about border security because you start to raise the issue and Democrats will say, yes, we're in favor of border security too. But to them, it means letting only 5,000 through a day and sending more money to the Border Patrol so they can process people faster. No, keep it simple, stupid. It's a wall, a wall,
Yep.
a wall, a wall. And Democrats can't fudge that. Democrats are either for a wall and against a wall. And if the Senate Democrats who are up for re-election this year suddenly start to pivot and say, yeah, well, maybe the wall's a good idea, they're conceding the one thing Democrats could never concede to Donald Trump. That's the wall. Trump means wall. If Democrats agree, that means they're saying Trump was right all along.
Jessica, I've had yesterday we had Victor Avila on talking about what's really happens at the border. One of the most compelling shows that I've done where I felt like I really got a better sense of what happens at the border and how it operates. So if you didn't see it yesterday, please go watch it because let's just be blunt, YouTube shadow banned it. But I will say to Larry's point, there are two issues: immigration reform, border security. And Democrats do a great job of blending the two and talk about it as if it's one issue. Republicans need to separate these issues and make it clear: security, 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 whether you care about trafficking, drugs, crime, terrorism. This is where it's all stemming from.
Yeah, security first. And I think the biggest thing politically that Axios poll draws down, HR2 passing in the House, which Larry's right. It's how we talk about the crisis at the border, because Republicans already passed a great bill that would solve all of the problems. The Senate killed it, right? And we know politically that they'll never pick it up, and that's fine. But Republicans do, I think, have the solution here. But the biggest thing, the biggest part of this story that I think is really the most important is in 2022, independents, swing voters, low propensity voters, they could kind of ignore the border, right? They didn't necessarily, they only saw the stories and the humanitarian crisis on Fox News or Newsmax and right-leaning sites. Now it's everywhere. So 2024 is a different political environment because the border has been so porous and completely unchecked for so long. It's everywhere. It's not just Texas. It's every single city. It's every single major media market. And these senseless and entirely preventable deaths from illegal migrants that are now having to be covered by even the New York Times and Washington Post, everyone sees that. And so 2022, there's a lot of reasons why that went down the way it did. You've talked about it a ton on your show. I think one of the biggest blessings for Republicans is the opportunity to win this election with a mandate on border security. And then that is day one. It's day one. And this crazy talk of Biden that, I mean, honestly, the flip-flopping out of this administration, 1 week they don't have the authority, the next week they do. It's such BS because the truth is, he did 94 executive orders in the first 3 weeks of his administration. Plenty of authority then to open the border, to bust open asylum, to change all of the rules and roll back every single stone, fence, wiring towards the wall that President Trump had put in place. So this is a day one issue for me. It's a political winner. It's also the right thing to do. And it's going to get us all of those swing, low propensity independent voters that we desperately need in November.
Absolutely. Well, Jessica touched on the legal authority, if you will. Mm-hmm. Like Biden claims he can't do anything until he can, and the law and what it says he can and can't do. You know, the thing that's interesting is there are rumors that he is now going to announce some kind of action on asylum, whatever, which again would undermine the legal argument that he couldn't do anything, which again is bogus because he undid a bunch of Trump stuff. He's welding doors open. How much of this do you think should be based on a legal basis, on talking about what the law permits?
I mean, the law permits a ton, obviously, because Donald Trump was able to do so much of this and implement so many of these policies on his own via executive order. We haven't passed a major immigration statute in a long time. You look at the existing immigration laws, they are pretty darn restrictive. All that's needed is to enforce them, which was, of course, the whole, the ridiculousness of the debate about the Senate bill. They basically said, oh, we're going to give new authorities to the president. It's like he doesn't need more authority. He needs to use the authority he already has. And the reason why Republicans were obviously right to oppose that bill is because the only thing that was worth giving up anything for was new laws that constrained the president's discretion and forced him to enforce the border, even if he wasn't otherwise inclined to do so. And none of that was in the bill. So Yeah, I mean, obviously, we put Trump in the White House. This could get fixed day one. It really is, because it was fixed 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think actually it'll go day one on steroids, because Trump now knows how much more he can do. He knows who he can depend on to get it done. This is going to be, I think, a very different first 100 days than the first 100 days I was part of. All right, animal lovers, you've heard me say this before, but you got to go to deltarescue.org to check out the great work that my friend Leo Grillo has been doing at Delta Rescue. Leo has made it a lifelong mission to make Delta Rescue a no-kill sanctuary for life. What does that mean? It means this isn't a shelter. They're not there for temporary. They can go there and live forever to get the veterinary care, the support, the nutritional needs for life, because of the work that Leo Grillo has done. It all started when he rescued one Doberman, and now has turned it into a lifelong mission. But here's the thing. Delta Rescue, and as I said, if you go to deltarescue.org, check out the videos. Unbelievably compelling if you're an animal lover, and you can see the great work that they do. But it all relies on help from people like me and you. Every contribution is important, and it helps. $5, $10, $15, $100, $1,000, a recurring donation. It all allows the work that Leo Grillo has done at Delta Rescue to continue. Horses, dogs, cats, you name it. But if you go on there, do me one more favor. Check out the estate planning gift and see if you're an animal lover, if you can make Delta Rescue part of your estate to make this a lifelong, enduring mission. Help Leo do what he's done so greatly for decades to come. Thank you. Jessica, if this is our political winner of an issue, which I agree for all the reasons that you enumerated, I think the one that keeps me up at night politically is this abortion issue. And I think we saw what happened in Arizona, the Supreme Court of Arizona resurrecting this 1864 law outlawing abortion with the exception of the life of the mother. But Democrats have done a good job of getting it on the ballot, actually, whether it's enshrining it in the Constitution or whatever, making sure, because I think that's a good turnout model for them and their people, even if they don't like the candidate. And by getting them out there, the odds are, good that, hey, if I get you to vote in Arizona to support abortion, you'll vote for Ruben Gallego for the Senate, and that helps us, right? So that's their strategy. Same thing in Florida. They think that's going to help them against Rick Scott, potentially put the state back in. But there are three key battleground states, Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, aside from all the other ones, where that I think is concerning. Walk me through your thinking on how politically potent this issue is or not.
Yeah, I think this is the question of the moment, but it's also been the question of the last year, right? This is not new, how to deal with these snapback laws. We knew that Arizona was one of the oldest laws on the books post-Dobbs. Right. It was going to snap back to it. It was in every single graphic when we were talking about the Dobbs case when it first dropped. So here's what I think. We are, as Republicans, we are having a problem deciding if abortion is a state's issue or a federal. If it's a state's issue, then the Arizona law stands, and it's up to the state legislature to then take some action if they want to change it. And of course, why would they not look at a law from the 1800s? That's over 100 plus years old. Like, times have changed. So yes, they should look at it. They can look at it. Is it a federal issue? President Trump has come out and said he will not support and sign a federal abortion ban. What will Trump do independent of that, though? And every time that the president, the previous president, had the opportunity to choose life from 2016 to 2020, he did.
Yes.
Now, was it because of Mike Pence's influence? Was it because of others' influence? Doesn't matter. He knows that life is most precious. So to me, some of these arguments actually are academic.
But I agree with everything you're saying. But I would argue that it's not about what President Trump says or doesn't necessarily. Is this a politically potent issue right now to get the vote out for the Dems in these key states?
Dems think it is. And I think that they will be successful getting their people out on this issue. Where I was going with this, though, is that Republicans need to not take the bait.
Correct.
We need to stop talking to women only from the waist down. I am so tired of that. We have so much more to actually talk to the suburban woman, to talk to independent women about. We are the same women that pay our bills, that fill up our gas tanks, that my husband's a veteran, concerned about wars. We pay our kids' tuitions, like open the scope and stop talking to me just from the waist down. It's absolutely infuriating. And it's something that I actually wish our Republican candidates on the right would say, we're pro-life, we support life. We want to see life protected to the fullest that is capable. When we're in power, we will do that every step of the way. But let's have a larger conversation about the issues that are affecting all Americans, including women, which are more than half of the voting populate these days. And let's not take the bait from the left to just only get focused on this, because honestly, we'll lose, because Republicans, they're too split. Everyone's too split on if this is a federal issue or a state issue. And Will's the lawyer here. He knows that there's legal arguments for a federal and legal arguments against a federal. Like no one's deciding this. So put it aside and talk about the other stuff that will matter.
Right.
And I think that's actually a better chance to combat it and beat the political horse that the Dems are going to draw out, because this is the only thing they have to talk about, Sean.
All right, I want I want to get to the legal piece of this in a second. But Larry, when you talk to folks on a daily basis, here's what I want to know. The way that like right now, I think Democrats are united. They're like, we're against this. We're going to be okay. You've got a lot of Republicans for a variety of reasons, some of which Jessica mentioned in terms of how they're being communicated. You've got some Republicans, both men and women, that are against this because they're personally pro-choice or they don't think this or that. And then you've got a bunch that are pro-life. We're, I think, fractured on this issue on the right. They're united on the left. And from a political standpoint, I think that's where the Dems realize why they've gone all in on this issue.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's because they don't have a whole lot else. It's not like they can talk about the booming economy and how great national security is or how great crime in the streets is. So, yeah, they're gonna go all in on the things that they think they have that will work. I will tell you this: Republicans need to get smart about it. They need to first say, "I will not be lectured to about this issue from a party that can't even define what a woman is." Let's start with that before you start telling me that you're the champion of women on this one issue. Also, women have different opinions about this, depending on whether you're single or married, how old you are, et cetera, et cetera. But finally, the fact is, Sean, I think Republicans have had it way too easy for the last 50 years. They are lazy. All they had to do up until 3 years ago was say, yeah, we should do away with Roe v. Wade. And that was enough. There wasn't anything else. And it's like they never imagined what it would look like when Roe v. Wade was gone.
Dog caught the car.
That's right. And now Roe v. Wade is gone. That means this is a battle at every state level. Donald Trump's announcement this week is incredibly in keeping with a life after Roe v. Wade. It is consistent with a life after Roe v. Wade. And Republicans who cannot talk about this issue and defend the fact that human life begins at conception, we're not debating about when life begins. We're debating at which stage of life we are willing to protect that life. If they're not capable of making those arguments and still call themselves pro-life Republicans, they should get off the stage now, because it's a lot more complex than just saying we should do away with Roe v. Wade.
I agree. I think any Republican that can't articulate, I believe it's a life, therefore the government has a right and an obligation to protect life, full stop, and go from there.
Right.
But
this what that penalty looks like is up for debate. Whether it looks like Arizona circa the Civil War or not, that's the conversation to have.
Okay, Will, can you just explain? I still don't, I was busy yesterday. Mm-hmm. I get this alert that says Arizona, I'm sorry, it may have even been, whatever, today's Thursday.
A few days ago.
It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. It's been a busy week. I apologize. I'm a hardworking guy. But I get this alert that says Arizona has, how did this happen? And then it says, well, Arizona wasn't even a state when it took place. Is the legislature legally just bound by this, or is it going to be challenged? Give me the legal understanding of what happened.
So I'm sort of talking, I'm not super informed about the specifics of how Arizona's law works, but I can give you a general idea of what's happening. So obviously, every state has a period before it was a state when there was still law in the state. And, common law evolves over time as judges make decisions and rely on previous decisions. And also, when the state of Arizona became a state, you don't just assume that it had to write every single law anew in order to do that if it had already some existing statutes from its time as a territory. So basically, I think that, there's almost certainly some sort of principle in Arizona law and in other states as well that says, the laws of the territory prior to the time that we became a state are just adopted as such. And so now when courts look at those, they say, well, unless there's been an explicit repeal, the law is the law. So if you don't like the law, change it.
The other part I wanted to ask you about is Arizona's attorney general came out and said, I will not enforce this. No woman or doctor will be prosecuted for this. I mean, she's the attorney general. I get that. But how common is it for someone of that stature, the chief law enforcement officer, to decide what laws they can and can't follow? And just because she said that doesn't matter, right? So if I'm a cop or something, can I arrest somebody even though you're not? Or like, what does that mean in terms of enforcing the law?
Well, I guess if you're an abortion doctor in Arizona, you'd probably look pretty hard at the statute of limitations, and try and figure out what that is, because, simply an offer of a promise of non-enforcement from an existing attorney general is not binding very likely on future.
Oh, I get what you're saying. So that you don't want to be caught in the next attorney general who gets elected says, I'm going back 5 years and getting everybody.
Correct. And so, yeah, that's the problem. Unless you get some sort of, Arizona, every, 50 states have different rules.
But how normal is it? I mean, when I heard her say this, I get it. She's a left-wing Democrat, right? Okay, full stop. But how do you get to decide that you're only going to, as the chief law enforcement officer, what does that say when it's like, I'm going to enforce this law, but not that law, this one, but not that one?
Well, it's certainly not unprecedented in the last 5 to 10 years from Democrats, right? Both at the federal level with Joe Biden saying, I'm not going to enforce federal immigration law effectively. Also, local district attorneys like George Gascon in Los Angeles saying, I'm not going to enforce certain penalties, or just I'm outright not going to impose certain, I forget the exact the word, but the idea is I won't make sentences more severe based on a certain factor, even though California law, says I shall do that, I should do that. Okay. That's because there's prosecutorial discretion, and that's a longstanding principle in American law, both federal and state. And trying to fight it, it is an abuse of prosecutorial discretion to simply have a blanket policy that is not using discretion in individual instances. But I don't think there's a lot of affirmative law on that particular point that really forces people like the Attorney General of Arizona to
to me, this is the problem. I would say if you're the Attorney General, you argue, I don't agree with it. I'm going to urge the legislature to overturn this. I'm going to do this. But when you start picking and choosing what laws you're going to enforce or not, that is lawfare. Anyway, I got something. Go ahead, Jessica. Did you want to?
Let me just add one tiny thing to this conversation that I was reminded of this last week from Ben Carson. So before Ben Carson was
name
Secretary
dropper.
Carson,
I was talking to Ben Carson.
No, I wasn't talking to him. Someone reminded me about his profession before he was Secretary Carson. He was a fetal surgeon. And if you ask him, when he did this fetal surgery, if you ask him, did they administer anesthesia to the fetus in the womb? The answer is always yes. Because even the baby in the womb at that young of an age, when he was going in there with little tiny procedures, the baby felt pain. Yeah. And it was a resounding yes that it needed to have anesthesia. So where is that conversation about the empathy that even doctors have when they are trying to save the life of a unborn fetus? That is the conversation I want to have from a medical science standpoint and inject into this conversation. And I just forgot that about Carson.
I think it's a great point you're bringing up, because it's not just the medical profession. When someone experiences a tragedy, like let's say from time to time you turn on the news and a pregnant woman has been shot or killed by someone, and they'll say, the person's being charged with killing 2 people. The baby was killed as well. We use that terminology in society. It's only when the left wants to talk about it in this particular instance, do they dehumanize this baby? Then it's a fetus. And every other facet of conversation, when you talk to a pregnant woman, regardless of ideology, they always talk about the baby. I'm carrying a life inside of me. They're proud of it. It's only in this narrow scope of debate do we ever dehumanize the value of that life, Larry.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it is in fact illegal to kill an unborn baby, except for certain exceptions, and those exceptions are all about abortion. So the value of that life is now solely dependent on the perception of and the value in inflicted upon that child based on the mother and I suppose the doctor involved in the procedure.
Yeah.
Back to politics, though, Sean, I think one rule we can all agree on, don't be caught on video 2 years ago saying you think that this Arizona law is a great law and you support it. And then once it becomes reality that the law has to be enforced, officially say that you oppose the law 2 years later. That's not a smart political move.
I know who you speak of.
I'm just speaking hypothetically.
Hypothetically, you're not. You're not telling anyone to go jump in a lake. But I do think that, look, this is why my view is that if you stand on principle all the time, you never have to worry. I mean, I am
That's right.
unequivocally pro-life. I will defend it if that means that I lose. I mean, so I agree. This is the problem with too many people in Washington is that they go like this, they put their finger in the air and they go,
right.
okay, now I'm going to. Speaking of Washington, and Larry, I want to go back to you as the radio guy on the panel. I will preface this with, this is not a shock, except for it was said out loud. There was a senior editor at NPR. His name is Yuri Berliner, senior business editor and reporter, key line in that, at NPR. He wrote this op-ed, and this is why it's like literally saying it out loud. And he writes this: you know the stereotype of the NPR listener, an EV driving, Wordle playing, tote bag carrying coastal elite. It doesn't precisely describe me, but it's not far off. I'm a Sarah Lawrence educated, raised by a lesbian peace activist mother. I drive a Subaru, and Spotify says my listening habits are mostly similar to people in Berkeley. I fit the NPR mold, and I'll cop to that. Well, he goes through and he starts talking about how back in 2011, although NPR's audience tilted to the left, it still bore somewhat, he claims, a resemblance to America at large. And then he starts to say that it's completely changed. At NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff, who was the top Democrat. By my count, NPR hosts interviewed Schiff 25 times about Trump. And then he goes on to say, but when the Mueller report found no credible evidence of collusion, NPR's coverage was notably sparse. Russiagate quietly faded. And then he talks about the Hunter Biden and how they suppressed that case. I guess my point is, he said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Here's my thing on this. We talk about budgets. I get this isn't big money. If NPR wants to get funded, I mean, look, I've got great sponsors. I'm awesome. I love independent media. If you want to do something, stand on your own. Why is this so difficult for people in the Republican circles on Capitol Hill to say, fine, NPR, if you want to get funded by the Hollywood elites, God bless you. It's America. Go do it. Let's just defund it, though.
That's right. The bottom line with this entire story is that you and I have to pay for this crap.
Yeah.
That we have to pay for this propaganda. And by the way, you're right. I do a morning radio show in D.C. We have a staff of 4. They have a staff for the exact same show in D.C. of over 20. They are not running their radio business like anyone in the radio business because they are subsidized, Sean. Every single editor in a management position at NPR is a registered Democrat. Every single one of them, not one.
Well, look, he writes this. He says, in recent years, I struggled to answer that question, concerned about the lack of diversity. I looked at voter registration for our newsroom in D.C., where NPR is headquartered, and many of us live. I found 87 registered Democrats working in editorial position and 0 Republicans, none.
Yep.
Well, does that, I mean, I get, my view is it's America. You have a right to. You want to have left-wing media or right-wing, go for it. But to Larry's point, we shouldn't be paying for it.
I agree. We shouldn't be paying for it. And yet somehow we are paying for it. And we have been paying for it for 50 years. I sort of have a strong, a view that we could be a little more expansive in how we look at this. Like if Democrats see the NPR as a third rail, then fine. We're going to build a 1,000 employee news operation with government taxpayer funding that is exclusively staffed by Republicans. Okay. And we're going to do even better than you. We're going to give it a TV license. So, and make every cable broadcaster broadcast it.
I don't, first of all, my view is it would start like that and then it would slowly tilt to the left because that's kind of his point on NPR. But Jessica, I mean, I guess my answer is this gets back to a conversation I had with Rand Paul about a bunch of other projects that were earmarked. Why are we funding? What is it? We don't have a lack of media. Why is it the federal government funding a left-wing show? Like, this is not the function of a federal government.
Well, I think what's happened is NPR presents itself as, middle of the road, and reporting like this shows that is just flat out not true. And the Trump administration's budgets did defund it.
Yeah.
And there was, this huge uproar on the right and the left about it. So I think this is like an easy answer for an appropriations 0 line out. It's honestly, you see this and I'm like, okay, of course, like, And of course, everyone at NPR is a Democrat. All their listeners are at NPR are Democrats. When was the last time any of us even listened to NPR? You know, the average NPR listener wakes up. It's the same day every day. It's January 6th for them. They get in their EV car, they go get their abortion, and then they hang out with Hunter Biden. Like, it's the same thing every day. Like, that's what they do. So why are we paying for that?
You forgot the dairy-free chai latte matcha, but other than that,
there
100%.
you go.
All right. Well, here's the thing.
I
I think not anywhere near the border, but if you're a Republican, make Democrats defend this crap. By the way, we didn't get to this today, but I got a wrap. I will say one story that I thought was fascinating is that this weekend is some big anniversary of Scrabble. I'm not a big Scrabble guy, but I know how to play it, and I can't. Gen Z is asking Scrabble, and not asking. They did it. They released now a 2-sided game board, which the other side is less competitive and more inclusive, so it appeals to Gen Z. All right, snowflakes. I mean, I can't wait to see what happens. I know. Monopoly now is like, you know, it's like dorm rooms and hostels instead of Park Place. Anyway, guys, thanks for being with us.